All right, everybody, so for our Socratic seminar this morning, our main goal is using textual evidence to support our claims. So while you're engaging in those questions that you guys already prepped yesterday, make sure that when you're responding, you're either citing the text directly or indirectly, so using some quotes to back up what you say. That's kind of our main goal for today. We're going to open with group one. You're going to go first. I'm going to let you go for 10 minutes in your Socratic seminar answering some of those questions that you guys prepped. I'll have you pause after 10 minutes. We'll get some feedback from our co-pilots, and then we'll return to our Socratic seminar for a total of 30 minutes per group. After 30 minutes, I will have the outside group. You guys are tapping in, and you're now becoming the pilot, and your co-pilot will support you. And you guys, again, will go for 30 minutes. Some things that I have to support you as you guys are working today. On your desk, you should have what's called like an academic language script. These are kind of some sentence starters to help you guys engage with people in an academic type conversation. Good for meetings, good for the workplace, good for seminar-based classes in college. But that gives you some sentence frameworks for how to respond to people, how to ask clarifying questions, those sorts of things. You also have your notes. You also have your roles and kind of the checklist for those sorts of things and what you need to be doing for your role. And you also have our rubric. Any questions before we get going? So some more support that you have. Co-pilots, people in the outer circle, you have Post-it notes on your desk. Feel free to use those to pass to your partners and give them some help, some encouragement, some quotes, some questions that they can ask, those sorts of things. Before I let you start, will you turn around right now and will you tell your co-pilot what your role is and how they can best support you today? All right, and bring it back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Co-pilots, you are there to help support your pilot while they're in our inner circle. Some things just to keep in mind in terms of our classroom norms, especially for discussion. Be thoughtful, be courteous, be curious. So feel free to ask clarifying questions if someone says something that you don't understand or if you have further questions about. When you're in the inner circle, please monitor your airtime. We've got a big group and I want to make sure everyone has some time to talk. If you find yourself talking too much, maybe bow out of the conversation for a little bit and give someone else a chance to jump in there. Refer to the text. That's our goal for today. Again, that can be direct or indirect citations. Be an active listener and support your co-pilot. That being said, I'm going to toss it over to our facilitators to get us going. All right, go for it.
Okay, sorry. Does anyone have any questions in particular that they want to talk about, or just want a random one being brought up first?
I'd like to start by asking, what inferences can Joe make about Chambliss's relationship with God? This was a question that Lillian posted in the discussion. I feel it's a very interesting
question. So that was the question that I wrote. And from that, I thought that maybe at one point Chambliss could have been an actual religious man, an actual Christian person who was devoted to God, and he might have realized that he could gain power from being a pastor, and that need for him wanting to be in charge kind of took over his actual faith. He said something, it was on page 107, and the quote is, "But what about the meth explosion?" I asked. What did he have to say about that? He said that was how God chose to do it. So he does think that God is he's not just pretending to be Christian, but I think that he uses that to be more powerful.
Can you tell me which perspective?
That was when Clem was talking to the other officer about Chambliss's past.
Yeah, I like that quote too. I wrote that one down. I thought it was important to mention that he
like also talked about how he didn't care about the girl that he killed. That was also important because it kind of tells us that he might not really have gotten him. He was. It just shows how obscure his view is. But I also thought that he like really misled himself, and he took certain pages from the Bible and like didn't believe in other ones. And that was on page 3. It says, "Under the new sign, right out there by the road, this letter to the Lord." And I just thought it was like a good quote because it shows how he only cared about that one part. And even you see it at the end of the novel when Ben repeats the verses back, he didn't care about some Bible. He only focused on ones he thought were right.
I go ahead and add. I disagree with what William said, but I do like some of the points that he made. I talked about how Chambliss's relationship with God was more casted upon himself, like he was kind of using it as a front. And I wanted to quote pages 3 and 6. It starts. This is when Adelaide Lyle is talking about the church and about, I think it was Molly Jameson, and she says, page 3 says, "But Chambliss convinced them it was safe to challenge the will of God." And then it contradicts that later on, and he says, or Adelaide says, "You could tell by the way they handled they're meaning the snake, that they didn't want to hurt it, and they didn't want themselves to get bit either." So even if Chambliss is kind of using God as like, hey, like, I believe in God, I believe in all this, but somehow he's telling others to trust God, but he's not going to himself. So he obviously isn't very strong.
Although I think that's an excellent point. I thought that Chambliss, I think him and his relationship with God are almost one and the same, because on page 244, even Clem realizes this when he says, "I'm sure even a man like you know that Christ healed the sick." "Yeah, I know. He did," I said, "but you ain't Christ." And I think that really shows that multiple people like know that Chambliss has a very obscured view of how he sees God and how they might be, how he really thinks that he is either like Jesus or God, and that how he can try to help people in a very obscure way.
I agree with that. I use the same quote, but I kind of like the ending part where it says he smiled and looked up at me and narrowed his eyes after he says, "Yeah." He's like, "You ain't Christ," or whatever. But I kind of, this like entire thing in the book kind of reminded me. Also in the Bible, it says in Matthew 4, when Jesus is tempted in the wilderness, Satan's like, "Hey, like throw yourself off the cliff to prove that you are like the son of God." And he's like, "No, I'm not going to test the power of God." But Chambliss kind of goes almost like in the role of Satan himself more, by saying like, you know what, I'm going to touch fire. I'm going to mess with poisonous substances, and all of these things. And it's like his relationship with God is based off of the worship of himself, not necessarily like who he is worshiping. And it kind of like he manipulates his power for the people, like so that they can like fear him more, because he knows that if he's saying, "Yeah, like let's heal people," it says also, I use something about like how he should care about like the healing within the family. He doesn't care about the healing within the family, but necessarily saying like, "I'm a pastor and I can heal."
Well, it's interesting though to me because it kind of poses a question if like Shameless is treating their religion as like a cult almost, because he himself believes that he's like, what's the word, like a messiah, and like that he really believes that he's. I wonder if he really believes that he's like he really is Jesus, or if he wants other people to believe that he's Jesus, so they do what he says.
I do think it's like kind of a mix of both. I think he does have some genuine spiritual belief that drives him in some manner. Because when he was in prison, I got this from page 107. It says, "The warden told me he couldn't hardly keep that man from setting himself on fire once he got inside the pen. He said they hold services right there on the spot wherever they felt moved. The chapel and their cells were out in the yard." And I think that he had a lot less to gain from holding these services inside the prison than outside, where he could manipulate people to get what he wanted. However, he clearly does take advantage of this position that he kind of gave himself. And I think it reflects who he was in the past, a manipulator. Like he clearly took this girl and managed to like we don't know the full background, but he had this young girl basement where it was a meth lab, right? Exploded, not good, and I guess he had he found God after he survived, and I think a lot of what was before still lingers in and kind of corrupted that like newfound faith.
Personally, I don't believe that he truly believes the nonsense that he spouts. Specifically because, well, starting with he's killed 3 people. You don't do that and still believe you're in the right. But I feel like his problem is he tries to use his religious power as a means to an end to keep running from his past. Like it mentions how, like in page 1 or something, like after he got sent to the Allendale pit down in Alto, he was explaining away those burns by telling folks that God had done it to him, and that I feel like that's representative of his whole like thing as a whole, because that's his explanation every single time. He doesn't mention the girl that died while he got burned. He doesn't mention Molly Jameson, and he pretends he had little to do with Stubbs' death later on when Clem talks to him. So I feel that he is using his religious power as a means to cover himself up. Also, I should probably mention around 7 minutes have passed.
So let's take this as a moment to pause for a second. Inner Circle, will you turn around and get some immediate feedback from your co-pilot? How are you doing on that goal that you set earlier? All right, and let's bring it back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Before I let you back at it, let's just take a quick pause and check in with some of our roles. Analysis advocate, that's Faith and Peyton. How are we doing on our goal of incorporating textual evidence?
I think we're doing good. I feel like every person who's spoken about something specific has provided textual evidence and what pages and whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, I only had to ask once whose perspective is which.
Yeah.
But I think we're doing good.
Awesome. I would agree with you. Aspiration advancer, anything you need us to work on? That's Charlie. That's you. Yeah, you're fine. And Jacob.
Yeah, I think with our goal of using text to explain these questions we came up with, I think, like they were saying, we've been using a lot of text evidence to support those ideas, and I think just continuing to ask questions that need more text evidence. Same thing.
Cool. Yeah, Jacob, hop
I
in
was
there.
gonna say another goal should probably be we should probably try and get more questions out of the way. Just spend 7 minutes on one. So we should probably try to.
Cool. I love it. And again, anyone can pose a question at any time. So when you feel like the subject's kind of gone dead, feel free to bring a new one in. Motivation manager, anything that you are proud of? Then that's you. What are you proud of? What are we doing well?
I thought we did really good. I thought Jacqueline did really nice of like bringing in the Bible. I thought that was really nice, and everybody's doing good. It'd be nice to hear some more people speak though.
Cool. Okay, we can definitely work that in. Facilitators, do you need any support?
No, I was gonna say that I might like bring in a new question because we've been on this one for like a minute, but yeah, that's all. I think we're pretty focused.
I think so too. You guys are on it. All right, timekeeper, let's put 23 minutes back on the clock and have at it.
Okay, so I was gonna ask the question since like it relates to like what we were just talking about. It says, do you think that the people of Marshall genuinely believe that the people that God will protect them from harm in the church, or are they just scared of the chamberlain